Don't look any further. Don't look any further. During the span of the 450 years after the book of Malachi was written, the earth had a void spiritually. For during the span of the 450 years, God used neither prophets nor priests to proclaim or to prophesy anything. It was a period in which heaven didn't speak a word. But as the world turned, the generations finally came up to 42. And all of a sudden, a miraculous birth takes place in a little town called Bethlehem. From the beginning of time, everybody had expectations that the Messiah would show up. But in the meantime, and in between time, folk were trying everything they possibly could to fulfill what could only be divinely fulfilled. And it is the same thing as we look at life today. Many of us grew up in church, but as soon as we got grown, as soon as we could call our own shots, we thought that we could find a better way. Just to find out that the ways that grandmama and big mama and mama and daddies and uncles showed us, that the more we looked, we found out that we didn't have to look any further. Some of us have had jail time. Some of us were alcoholics and former drug addicts. Some of us were lazy and unemployed. And we found and we pacified ourselves with things that we thought would make our life fulfilled. Just to stumble in our own mess, get tangled in our own web, just to find out I really didn't have to look any further. We've had good relationships, bad relationships, and we thought that man or woman could satisfy us, man could make us and fulfill us, just to find out that mom and them was trying to give us everything that we need. And in spite of them giving us everything we need, we ended up running away from the very thing that we thought we could live without, just to find out we really did need what they were trying to give us. I can't speak for anybody else, but I found out that in life has a way that if you've ever had a taste of him, you'll find out it's just like what David said, that you'll say, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. And by us looking further and looking at other avenues and looking at other ways and pacifying ourselves, we found out that everything I needed, I had it right there in my hand. But aren't you glad that in the midst of you leaving it, that it didn't leave you? That when I got out there and I did my thing, I made my own turn, I tried to make up my own rule, and I found out that I left him, but he was there with me all the time, that no matter how drunk I got, how high I got, who I was with, who I was dipping and tipping with, he was there all the time. That's why Job said, where is it that I can go and hide from it? Yeah, David said, if I make my bed in hell, he's there. He said, if I go to the depths of the sea, he's there. Isn't it good to know that even when I thought I was leaving him, he was there all the time, and I didn't have to look no further? And the sad reality of it is that even after the miraculous birth, after Jesus presents himself in the temple and began to speak out of the book of Isaiah about the Spirit of the Lord, it was upon him because God had ordained him, had anointed him to preach the gospel and to preach liberty to the poor and to set the captives free in the midst of everything else. Jesus catches hell because they're looking for a king without a crown. Can I tell you, he didn't need a crown. The reason he didn't need a crown is because he's the Godhead. You don't get no higher than that, and the crown don't make you a king. Y'all gonna talk to me? It wasn't the crown. It wasn't about the crown. They were looking for something exterior when the kingdom is something that's interior. And a lot of people will miss what God's trying to do because you look the same, because you dress the same. But when the transformation takes place, it does not take place on the outside. It takes place on the inside. Why do you say that? Because the kingdom is a spirit thing. It is not a flesh thing. It is not a tangible thing. And if there's no kingdom in you, then there's no king in you. So Jesus finds himself coming out of church, and Mother and Mary and his father are now just going off about their business. And 3 days later, they find out that we don't have Jesus. It's something else when you birth Jesus, but how you lose something you birth? Y'all talk to him. I'm about through. Where is Jesus? Mary asks. Have you seen Jesus? 3 days has passed, and the 3 days that you see Jesus missing also represents the 3 days that he laid in the tomb. Because after 3 days, they find him. Guess what? After 3 days, after he was buried in the tomb, they find him. And when Mary comes to him, Mary says to him, why is it that you got separated from us? Jesus said, hold up, sis. With all due respect, I know who you are, but I didn't come here to be pacified and be babied by you. He says, I must be about my Father's business.